Hello, my babe, and welcome to the very first Sweetfire Soul Revival Tarot forecast for the week of September the 2nd through the 8th. So, if you don't already know me, my name is Jo, and I am formerly House of Swords Tarot, so tarot is my jam. So, this weekly reading is really meant to recalibrate you and sort of give you a heads up to the energy that may very well be popping into your life, but also some tips on what to fall back on instead of the sort of maybe old habits and patterns that aren't really serving you, and really focus on something that's going to bring you forward in a positive direction through any changes or challenges that are happening through the week. So, let's get started, shall we? We have first up the Five of Cups. And you're probably thinking that sucks. But it actually doesn't. Really, what the Five of Cups is telling us is that we've experienced this period of retrograde on a personal level, this period of stillness. And maybe we wallowed a little bit, and maybe we've sat in some victimhood, and maybe we kind of had a pity party or felt sorry for ourselves. But it doesn't feel good anymore to be there. It doesn't feel good. We felt validated in the moment, and we enjoyed soaking up that drama. But now we're just kind of like, this is boring. I don't really want to do this anymore. I don't really feel good in this space. So the Five of Cups is saying, even though you were in that place of almost like a mourning, almost just in a place of feeling really, really sorry, or feeling like you've lost something, or that there was something that didn't work out the way that you thought it would. Feel those feelings, but don't get lost in them. Don't get stuck there. Because even though there may have been some perceived loss or failure, it's not really the case. The universe is always working for us. So maybe the package is just going to look a little different when you get what you actually want. Maybe it's not going to come exactly how you thought it would look. But we don't have to sit in that mourning period forever. And it's not going to stay forever. It's just a temporary thing. And it's not going to be a permanent situation. And our next card, apropos, is Death. So change is here. We're moving from that Five of Cups place into death, which is transformation. And I say it's an apropos card because we're moving into, it's a new month, it's September. We're moving from summer, welcoming in the fall, and our lives are going to change in a big way. Things that we really wanted are going to come to fruition. But when we were in that retrograde period of the Five of Cups, we really needed to, instead of focusing on the problem, and if you're still feeling that Five of Cups energy, don't focus on what's wrong. Don't focus on what you don't want. Instead, focus on what you do want. What is your vision for the rest of your life? What is your vision for the rest of the year? What is your vision for the short term and the long term? So ask yourself, in that vision that you have of these things, short term, long term, is it enough? Is it a big enough picture? And what I mean by that is, are you limiting yourself? Are you living in the parameters of what you've had before, or what someone told you that you could have, or something that society has dictated? Are you living in your limited beliefs? So if you're looking at this vision of your short-term future and you're seeing these very logical things, well, this can happen because I'm already on this path, or, well, this can happen because it's not too big and it's the most logical and seems to make the most sense. If you're looking at it from that very logical perspective, what magic is there? So, dream bigger. Really expand in the vision that you have for your short-term and your long-term future. Because being in this retrograde period, personally, but also in the planets, they're building up their energy. So it's like a slingshot. We're being pulled back to be let go, and we're going to be propelled forward. But first, we have to make sure that this vision, this thing we want to bring into our reality, this dream life we want to live, are these things that we're envisioning big enough? And that's what the universe is asking us right now, to make sure that we're really focusing in on the big picture. And when I say the big picture, I mean, imagine no limits. If the universe is limitless, you are limitless. So how can you take the parameters off of what you can see for your short-term future? Live outside of your limiting beliefs. So I say this because our final card is the Nine of Wands. The Nine of Wands says, when we're faced with this transition, we can go back to our old sort of bullshit, our old limiting, poor me, why is this happening to me type of vibe. We could fall back on that, or we can stop and say, wait a minute. Did that serve me? Did wallowing and pity partying and feeling sorry for myself, did that really get me anywhere? Did it make me feel better? Not really. What instead is going to make me feel good? How can I move through this transition, through this period of change in a way that's really going to elevate me? Because here's the thing. Through these situations that the Five of Cups brought, whether that was loss or disappointment or whatever, through that, you've learned a lesson. Through that, there was a silver lining, and it was teaching you valuable things to sort of keep in your toolbox to pull out when these situations arise again, so that you can say, wait a minute, I don't actually need to have a pity party. I can instead do this because I have all these tools that I've learned over time throughout all of these situations. So we don't really need to fall back into the old patterns. We're transitioning into something completely new. We're transitioning into something completely different. We're beginning that ascension, and that's what the rest of this year is going to bring us. It's going to bring us this huge transformation. And I also want to, before I get into your homework, I want to talk about our oracle card, which is cultivate compassion. And really, what this is saying is that when we have compassion for ourselves first, we are more likely to have compassion for others because we understand the vulnerability, that people have flaws, that we don't always realize that we have these tools. Sometimes we fall back on these old limiting beliefs and these old patterns that don't actually serve us. So when we take that step back and see it from that personal level, we can then have compassion for others because we have compassion for ourselves first. So know that even though there's going to be those backslides, even though sometimes you might fall back into that old pattern, that old habit, that's okay, because you can stop the momentum and say, well, wait a minute, I actually do have the tools to utilize to get through this in a really easy way and to shift my perspective quickly so that I don't need to feel all woe is me and pity party out, right? So that being said, I'm going to give you a little shadow work homework, and it goes along with our cards. So when we are looking at these old patterns, old habits, old limiting beliefs, old pain, trauma, disappointment, what I want you to do is I want you to write out about what areas in your life do you feel the most critical of yourself. So is it your looks? Is it your job? Is it your money situation? What areas in your life do you tend to really beat yourself up? And I want you to look at those things, and then I want you to write about them. And I want you to write about the experiences and the situations and the feelings around those areas and why you give yourself such a hard time about these things. Because when we do this, when we sort of take ownership of it, we can then cultivate that compassion for ourselves and say, well, I don't really have to beat myself up about this. I don't really have to get upset at myself about this. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to write about what areas or where in your life you give yourself a hard time, that you're the most critical of yourself. And how can you show those parts love and compassion and understanding? How can you pull from those things the lesson or the silver lining? And how can you reframe your belief on those things? How can you see them differently? How can you be grateful for those past situations because they taught you something? And what was the lesson? So how can we be grateful for these things that maybe seemed disappointing or upsetting or painful in the moment? What did they teach us? What is the silver lining from that situation? And how can we love ourselves for that? How can we show compassion and understanding to ourselves for these things? So that is what to look out for this week. And really just remember that through times of change, it's easy to want to stay in our comfort zone. We don't want to step outside of that. We want to stay in what we know, in our parameters. We don't really want to go outside of them. But when we're faced with change, especially change that's going to make our lives better, we have the tools to move outside our comfort zone and still feel comfort. Because you are your stability. You are your personal foundation. So that being said, know that you can take on any challenge, you can take on any kind of change or transformation, and it's just going to amp you up. It's just going to help you reach that ascension that you've been looking for. I hope that this is helpful for you. I hope that you have an amazing week, and I will see you next Sunday. Bye.